that's the part of my structure, is having a firm boundary. Like, it's not restricting it and saying, oh, it's so bad. I just know that it doesn't work for me. And I have standards and boundaries, and I've built those up around food. And then, so when I am at home, that's not an option for me to eat.
I think that that's a good segue, because my approach and what I learned from initially was, learning from Susan Pierce Thompson's Bright Line Eating, how she cuts out sugar and flour. There's this whole addiction model for losing weight, and understanding that we're addicted to these things, and really just making a firm line to stop eating them. And I think that that's very useful for a lot of people. Obviously, a lot of people have really successfully lost a ton of weight using that. And I also think that a lot of people don't necessarily want to associate with food in that way as an addiction, right?
Yeah.
And I've kind of, gone back and forth on, how do we create a new how do we reset that relationship to the sweet taste, which has been so capitalized on by the food industries now, because we find sugar in everything. They basically round out the taste of everything with this sweet taste, when really, as you know very well, there's many tastes of food and they all have special qualities, and we need all of those tastes. Our microbiome needs all those tastes to thrive. So, but we've gotten so, hyper focused or numbed down to the point where we need sugar to make things palatable.
Right.
So how do we break that cycle, but not get in this kind of entangled pattern of sort of considering our relationship to food an addictive relationship forever, right? So in my coaching platform, what I have done is, I at least have people cut that stuff out initially. However, I believe in people's ability to basically govern their relationship to food long term, once they've really reset their brain and really found a new relationship and lost the excess weight they want to take off. However, it's not that straightforward. Everybody's different. And some people really need a lot of structure. Some people need less structure, So I'm wondering, as I understand, you really used a lot of intuitive eating in your weight loss journey, and you incorporate that in your weight loss coaching. How do we find a balance between these two? And when is one appropriate, and how can we benefit from the notion of intuitive eating?
Right. So I like to see structured and intuitive eating kind of like yin yang, like they balance each other out. And structured eating and both intuitive eating, they can have their extremes. I think I mentioned this to you early. So structured eating to an extreme is being extremely restrictive. Going on a 1,200 calorie diet, obsessively counting things, and, cutting out all of your favorite foods. That's the extreme of structured eating. And then there's the extreme of intuitive eating, which is following every single impulse. There might be bacteria or in your body that's making you crave sugar. For example, I know Candida is really common and it needs sugar to thrive. So if you start to cut it out, they'll release chemicals to make you crave it. So it's just a different, it's hard to say go purely intuitive or purely structured, because there's extremes of both of these, and it's about finding the middle path. So intuitive eating is like when you're just simply listening to the natural cravings of your body and eating when your body gives you hunger cues and fullness cues, and just really sitting with your body and listening, like, okay, what is it that I'm needing right now? And structured eating is like planning out the meals, prepping, measuring, and possibly counting out the micro and macronutrients. Both of these, I think we can find a balance between them, instead of swinging from, some people will swing from like one extreme to the other, or some people will get stuck on one extreme or stuck over here. So if you're stuck on like you're eating impulse eating way too much. There's no structure. You're eating a lot of sugar. You need to bring yourself back to the middle. And that's coming with structured eating. If you're over here on the other end where you're really or you're way too strict, you've gone, you can see this in like extreme bodybuilding. When people are cutting down a lot, maybe some eating disorders, there's just way too much structure and restriction to the point where it's causing dysfunction. And that is, you need to bring into intuitive eating to bring you back into the middle and bring you balanced. So for me, I have an underlying structure, which my intuitive eating falls upon. So I took the time to listen to my body and listen to my emotions. So when I'm acknowledging my emotions, I'm not turning to food. And when I'm listening to my body, I understand what it needs. But sometimes we don't exactly understand that. And like what you said, there are people who will have to go to structured eating to understand those patterns first. And I do agree, like with eating sugar, removing sugar for a while, because your body can become very dependent on sugar. And just removing that and just pushing through the cravings, for a while. And then once it starts to neutralize, then introduce a little bit back, a healthy amount back in. So it is a balance. It's finding the middle path between structured and intuitive eating. And for example, I know that I really don't like pasta. It makes me feel bloated and heavy, and it's just not, my body doesn't work well with pasta. And so I have that boundary with it. So that's the part of my structure, is having a firm boundary. Like, it's not restricting it and saying, oh, it's so bad. I just know that it doesn't work for me. And I have standards and boundaries, and I've built those up around food. And then, so when I am at home, that's not an option for me to eat. I have, the foods that I know that make me feel well, the recipes I know that make me feel nourished and full and have the proper nutrients. And I just have that access for when I'm actually hungry, I can just go grab whatever. So, and listen to my body. So that's where I find the balance between intuitive eating and structured eating. And I think the biggest part of this is doing a little bit of internal work, is when you start to identify, your inner dialogue, your self-concept, the way you perceive yourself as becoming a healthier person. Like, if you start changing the story, like, oh, I'm becoming a healthier person now, instead of calling yourself down all the time, your actions, your choices begin to reflect this dialogue. So, for example, you can have, since you're starting to identify with a healthy person, when you go into, or as a healthy person, when you go into a kitchen, you're going to grab something that makes you feel great. That nourishes your body, that's healthy, that's good for you. So I think that's where intuitive eating, the strength of intuitive eating comes in. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, a lot of the identity stuff you're bringing up reminds me of James Clear's book Atomic Habits, and one of the key foundations for good habits in general is to identify with the habit rather than think of a goal. And this is one of the problems with weight loss and diets, is it's very goal oriented oftentimes, and it's all about the number on the scale, and you're sort of chasing it. And this is the metric rather than, how do I feel? Do I feel healthy today? Is this making me feel nourished and vital? I think that's a more realistic and present metric than what's on the scale. I know when I started to lose weight and change my relationship to food, oh my gosh, within a few weeks or a month or so, when I dialed in the right, amounts of food and started to eat a lot more produce and cut out, junk, I felt incredible. And that's what I noticed more than anything. It was like the number on the scale was moving, and that was fine to keep track of, but how I felt, especially mentally, was so much better. Another thing that you mentioned, and this is what I keep kind of noticing in my own habits around food, is it's kind of like a pendulum. for a lot of us who have struggled with our weight, you know, in the past, and maybe we've lost weight, sometimes it comes up, sometimes it comes down. I think what we all need to accept is that it's a continuum. You know, there's
Yeah.
never this kind of like golden sunset where you land and everything's perfect and good now, right? Like
Yeah.
we're always trying to maintain awareness internally and how we're eating, and it's changing. And this is kind of the approach I brought in, and I love talking to you about this because it's inspiration for also clients that I'm working with, and how to properly address this, because everybody's really different. But the way that I've noticed is that it's very helpful to know how much food I actually need to eat to lose weight.
Yeah.
If I have too much, if I excess weight, I know what the portion size looks like for breakfast, lunch, and
Right.
dinner. This is a really
Yeah.
good thing to know. How much protein, how much, you know, produce, how much starchy carbs, if I'm going to bring those, or how much fat. Like, just really know how much. How
Yeah.
much food does it take for me to sustain the weight that I am at? And how much food does it take to gain weight? Which there's also healthy weight gain too, whether you're too thin or you want to gain muscle. I think with that basic understanding, getting very familiar with those things, it gives a foundation to be able to eat more intuitively.